Welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. I'm Marty Goldenson, sitting in for Brian. Tonight, same-sex marriage in New York. The governor is reportedly introducing a bill in Albany tomorrow to legalize it. But will it pass? Will it even get to a vote? Or will gay couples wanting to wed have to continue those movable feasts to Canada, Connecticut, and now to Vermont, and can you believe, Iowa, who are ahead of us somehow? We'll discuss all this. Also tonight, 15 years after the Rwandan genocide, some good news at the village level. The international community thinks it has found ways to help.
Aid works when it's directed towards proven, measurable, monitorable, auditable technologies.
Speaking of provable, you'd think that a video would be rock-solid legal evidence, but it depends on the camera angle. Just ask the police and demonstrators at the New School who have posted dueling videos on YouTube. All of this tonight, but first, here are this week's online video picks. Well, it is the day that many of us dread. April 15th, when you've got to settle up with the feds, also the city and the state. Reason TV asks the question, if it's patriotic to pay taxes, who's the most patriotic? This is video pick number 1.
Anybody making over $250,000 is going to pay more.
You got it. It's time to be patriotic, Kate. Time to jump in. Time to be part of the deal. Time to help get America out of the rut.
Speaking personally, I think there are a lot of very rich people out there whom we can tax.
Did you use software to prepare your 2001 and 2002 tax returns?
I use TurboTax to prepare my returns.
You're the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee that writes all the tax law. How can you have problems paying your taxes?
Just because a report of the New York Times has a problem with me doesn't mean that the Congress and the country has a problem.
And I think when you spread the wealth around, it's good for everybody.
Talking about that was my original list. I knew it wasn't complete.
Somehow that video leaves me with the impression that the generous rich are carrying the stingy poor. It ain't the whole story. Over the past 20 years, the top 5% of income earners got raises of around 90%, and the bottom fifth of the population got raises totaling only 5%. As you know, the newspaper business is in trouble, but technology allows new forms of paperless journalism. USAID, the Aid for International Development people, have funded the American University in Cairo to have Egyptian political bloggers interview a U.S. official in the online virtual world Second Life. The project is run by former CBS Mideast correspondent Lawrence Pintack, or in this case, Larry's avatar. Take a look at this video, number 2.
This is the ultimate situation of breaking down barriers of time and space. We're putting people together who are on opposite sides of the world for a real-time conversation that, in this case, actually generated news. As we work with journalists here in the Arab world and other parts of the world who are tech-savvy, who are focused on the Internet and its various environs, it creates the opportunity to leverage these kinds of spaces.
This is one of the really incredible uses of virtual spaces, you know. So I'm actually sitting here in Cairo and this high official in the U.S. government is there in the U.S., and we can actually speak and talk in this virtual atmosphere. And this is one of the things that I think would be very important in the coming couple of years in light of the economic crisis. It is virtual, and when you weigh in the different things like the cost of traveling and actually arranging a meeting with Glassman, it just gives you an impression of what can be done. My only problem with the whole session has to be the answers of Mr. Glassman himself. Just hearing him say, for example, that there is progress in democracy in Egypt, that just kind of felt weird, because living here in Egypt, I don't really see that progress.
It was very clear to me that we were getting nowhere by preaching to people and dictating to people, and that what we needed to do was to be participants in a global conversation and to facilitate that conversation. And, you know, I think luckily the technology was at hand to do that.
Back to the real world, sort of. Since President Obama's election, some fiery media commentators have warned that the government is out to ban guns. In our video pick number 3, Media Matters for America asks the media to take a pill.
On Saturday, April 4th, 3 Pittsburgh police officers were allegedly shot and killed by Richard Poplawski. The accused shooter is reported to have a history of violence and a deep hatred for Jews and African Americans. In the wake of the tragedy, Poplawski's friends said that he was distraught over losing his job and
feared that the Obama administration would ban his guns.
The Obama administration was about to ban guns.
His guns would be taken away.
Of course, the Obama administration has not sought to ban guns. This rumor circulated widely among the extremist fringe of the right wing, and the media gave it credibility.
The Obama administration revealed its plans to go after gun owners.
A new assault on their freedom to buy and own guns.
These guys, they'll take away guns.
Busy planning how to ban guns from American citizens.
Ideas that were once the exclusive domain of the lunatic fringe are more and more finding a home on cable news.
We have right now a real paranoia on the right that is whipping people up.
They feel isolated, angry, betrayed, and besieged, and some of their leaders seem to be trying to mold them into militias.
This is what's coming, America. Depression and revolution.
Welcome to the New World Order.
Could it be the beginning of a beautiful friendship, a global New Deal, a New World Order?
Make that 2 pills. With so many transit cutbacks nowadays, it's nice to report some good transit news. Video number 4 from Street Films tells us about the BX-12, part of the new Select bus service that conveniently rolls east to west in the Bronx.
Right now we're in the East Bronx, or in the Pelham Parkway section of the Bronx, in the corridor for the new Select bus service. And we are taking the bus eastbound right now into Co-op City. This particular corridor actually connects East and West Bronx in a one-seat ride, which is the first thing, or the first kind of service to come to this area of the Bronx ever. Previously, anyone that wanted to go from the East to the West Bronx needed to take a bunch of buses, maybe even 2 trains. And now you just hop on the SDS and it takes you across the Bronx in about 47 minutes. Well, the unique thing about the Select bus service is that it has off-board fare collection, which is actually a new system, and it's what really makes this sort of bus service efficient and reliable. What it is, there's a bus shelter, and every bus shelter has ticket machines, and passengers insert their Metro card. You can use a pay-per-ride or unlimited, and you put it into the machine, and a second or 2 later it spits out a receipt. You keep it in your pocket, and you board the bus through the rear or the front. And it's pretty much an honor system. You are expected to pay, and there are inspectors on random buses who can ask you to produce your ticket, and if you don't, there is a fine. But it seems that it's running really smoothly, and most people are definitely abiding by this honor system.
The honor system, this is New York, makes you long for the days of turnstile jumping, doesn't it? I have this great business card, which didn't take too long to take out, but it is a baseball card, and I thought it was the ultimate. It's an old picture of me, and the older the picture, the younger the journalist. Apparently, it is not the cat's meow. Here is Joel Bauer with video pic number 5.
CSO, Chief Strategic Officer. Wow, I'm impressed. So what? He's an officer. I know companies that are worth $10,000 a year, and the guy's a CEO. I will never make a criticism if I don't have a resolution. You see that card? This is the most impressive business card I've ever seen. It's mine. It took me 25 years to design this. This card is expensive. It's about $4 a card because of the stock. It doesn't fit in a Rolodex because it doesn't belong in a Rolodex. It's the kind of thing where your card should be so good that even if they don't like you, they won't throw it out because it demonstrates incredible marketing capability. Life is not about being liked. It's about being effective. My card is die cut. My card is foil stamped. My card is embossed. Crowds guaranteed. You're kidding. My card, instead of telling you that I'm a CEO, because who cares about my title, tells you about the result I generate. I build crowds. Guaranteed. What do you do, guaranteed?
At $4 each, I wouldn't give out those business cards. If people asked for mine, I would sell it to them, and then I wouldn't need a job. And those are this week's online video picks. I'm Marty Goldenson, sitting in for Brian Lehrer. Same-sex marriage. Governor Patterson reportedly will introduce legislation in Albany tomorrow to make it legal. A press conference is set for 10 a.m. tomorrow. It's the latest development in a 2-week run of good news for gay marriage advocates. Both the Vermont legislature and the Iowa Supreme Court have okayed same-sex marriages. Does the New York bill have a chance? With 30 states banning such marriages, what's the nature of the polarization in this country, geographic or generational? Joining us is civil rights lawyer Yetta G. Kurland. She works with the organization Marriage Equality. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Hi. What are your hopes for tomorrow?
Well, very high. First of all, the fact that it's coming out, I think, is in itself a victory.
What do you mean by coming out?
Into legislation. Will be introduced by Governor Patterson as legislation on a state level in New York State. And I think that alone is something very exciting. Across the board in New York State, 51% of New Yorkers at a minimum, depending on who you talk to and who you listen to and what polls you listen to, support gay marriage. So hopefully we are hopeful and we are delighted that this is happening.
To what do you credit this? Is it the momentum from Iowa and Vermont and elsewhere, or do you think it's a desperate governor with low ratings?
Well, Governor Patterson has been a proponent for gay rights for some time, right from the beginning of his tenure, and so I think that this is another step in that. I do think that there's a backdrop across the country, Iowa, Vermont, and quite honestly, Chuck Schumer, Mayor Bloomberg coming out in support locally of gay marriage, I think is important and hopefully will be impetus for us to actually pass this law.
Yeah. Are you hopeful about it, or do you think we're a little shy given the fact there's Democratic and Republican opposition?
Well, there's certainly been opposition, and I know just recently Senator Honorato came out against it, but hopefully with some hard work from the proponents, Senator Duane, others who have been great fighters for this marriage equality, we can see some sort of response. And also, if the unfortunate happens and the bill doesn't pass, then we have our work cut out for us, and we can start working on focusing on those districts and those senators who we want to kind of impress the importance of this very important civil rights issue.
Good. For some people, it's not a civil rights issue at all. I want you to take a look at a video from the National Organization for Marriage.
There's a storm gathering.
The clouds are dark, and the winds are strong.
And I am afraid.
Some who advocate for same-sex marriage have taken the issue far beyond same-sex couples.
They want to bring the issue into my life.
My freedom will be taken away.
I'm a California doctor who must choose between my faith and my job.
I'm part of a New Jersey church group punished by the government because we can't support same-sex marriage.
I'm a Massachusetts parent, helplessly watching public schools teach my son that gay marriage is okay.
But some who advocate for same-sex marriage have not been content with same-sex couples living as they wish.
Those advocates want to change the way I live.
I will have no choice.
The storm?
is coming.
But we have hope. A rainbow coalition of people of every creed and color are coming together in love to protect marriage.
When you see an ad like that, what do you make of it? What do you think people are worried about?
Well, there's a lot to say about that ad. One thing I'll say, I guess, initially is it's interesting to hear them say things like there's a rainbow coalition, and it's interesting to see the right co-opt some of the language and some of the words and ideas that we've used to express the importance of same-sex marriage and equality.
We have diversity, and we're against this.
Right. And you know, it also reminds me, I'm 41, I remember in the 80s and 90s fighting for the right to just simply walk down a street with holding your partner's hand, and people saying things like they're making it too big of a deal, or they're taking it too far, or they're parading it around. And you know, these are very fundamental, basic rights to be able to visit your partner in a hospital, inheritance rights, rights in terms of tax advantages. These aren't things that I think people are taking too far. And quite honestly, I don't know that New Yorkers, when they see that video, necessarily buy it. I think we're more nuanced than that. I think we have more of an understanding of the issue. And
do you think it's a generational difference, or do you think it's regional?
I think it is both and neither. I think that, you know, the more that it truly is that old adage, you know, silence equals death, and that there's this invisibility issue. And the more, quite honestly, that we have inroads, shows like yourself talking about marriage equality, governors who are not afraid to bring it out to a vote, people talking about it in every part of our world, I think people start to realize it really isn't so terrifying. Marriage has been in existence in Massachusetts for several years, and as far as I know, the sun hasn't crashed into the earth in Massachusetts.
Yes, not the last check. It's interesting you raised this question of people changing. In Iowa, of course, there was this major court decision which made gay marriage legal, and in order to try to overturn this, they would have needed the support of the majority leader there of their Senate, whose name is Mike Gronstal, and Mike is not a kid. But Mike has a kid, and listen to what he has to say. It's interesting.
One of my daughters was in the workplace one day, and in her particular workplace at that moment in time, there were a whole bunch of conservative older men. And those guys were talking about gay marriage. They were talking about discussions going on across the country, and my daughter Kate, after listening to it for about 20 minutes, said to them, "You guys don't understand. You've already lost. My generation doesn't care." I think I learned something from my daughter that day when she said that. And I've talked with other people about it, and that's what I see, Senator McKinley. I see a bunch of people that merely want to profess their love for each other and want state law to recognize that.
Hard to know which video to believe, right? Which is you've already lost, or you see this first video with lots of young people who seem to be, I don't know, scripted probably, but still, you know, worried about this gay marriage issue, and then you see this older guy, just powerful guy, on, from your point of view, very much the right side. So do you think time's on your side?
I think humanity is on our side. I think eventually, you know, and quite honestly, whether you're a grandmother, a grandfather, a daughter, or a son, every one of us has someone in our lives, whether they're related, whether they're friends, that we know, that we admire, that we love, who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgendered. And I think the more that we acknowledge that, and the more that we realize that this is just a fundamental issue of civil rights and can relate that, I think the more time humans have with it, and people have with it, I think they get hopefully more comfortable with it. And,
interesting. Yeah. You know, out there in cyberspace, out there in the world of web video, which we concentrate on, that first video we saw, you know, was out there only briefly before it was mashed to death. This will amuse you. Take a look.
Some who advocate for same-sex marriage have taken the issue far beyond same-sex couples.
They want to bring the issue into my life.
Why does this matter to you?
What is it to you?
My freedom will be taken away.
If you don't believe in same-sex marriage, then don't marry somebody of the same sex.
I'm a California doctor who must choose between my faith and my job. I'm a Massachusetts parent helplessly watching public schools teach my son that gay marriage is okay.
I'm a Massachusetts parent helplessly watching public schools teach my son that gay marriage is okay. There is a storm gathering. The clouds are dark and the winds are strong, and I am afraid. Those advocates want to change the way I live.
This city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria.
The storm is coming.
Funny.
It's a good video.
Yeah. Underneath it is a serious question in that one and the one it mashed up, which is they keep saying these advocates want to change our lives. Do people who are intending to marry same-sex couples, do they have an agenda beyond their own desire to simply marry? Is there a larger agenda?
I don't see what it would be, other than just general tolerance. I certainly think that's interesting, and I'm not sure what that is. But I think we have to have a certain level of compassion for people, like you said. If this is a matter that is just, if it's a matter of time before we have same-sex marriage allowed, and this is people just kind of coming to terms with it. I think of like the misogyny laws, where years ago, folks who were not of the same race couldn't get married, and people felt very, very strongly some of the same arguments. And I think if you asked even those same people or people from this generation about that, they would see very clearly that that was misguided. And I think that these are just reactive. These are fear-based, kind of reactive stances.
You saw that note in the New York Times from a guy whose parents couldn't marry in Iowa, and he's gay, and now he can marry. Yeah, it's an interesting parallel, with those laws. This is on a related subject. Not exactly about what the governor may or may not do tomorrow. We're coming up on the 40th anniversary of Stonewall.
Yes, we are. This
summer. And maybe you should fill people a little bit about that history just for a minute and tell us whether it's important to honor those, what are called riots. I tend to call them resistance, but whatever.
It's very important to honor them. I live in Chelsea, bordering on the West Village and the Stonewall.
But you were a kid when this happened, so explain your memory of it.
I was one.
Yeah, so explain what your historical understanding is.
It was very important. I think that, as human beings, we identify and relate to a bigger, broader context, whether it's a group of people, a family, a culture, a community. Sure. And as someone who was coming out in the 80s, to know that there had been this uprising or this movement, as you mentioned, was very, very important. It gave a point of reference, and it kind of was like this this Horton Hears a Who kind of idea that you're not alone and that there is a community that's around you. And I think that that's very important for human beings. And I think that support and tolerance is very important. Just recently, last week, I think a young boy by the name of Joseph Walker took his life at the age of 11 because he had been the victim of anti-bullying and anti-gay attacks. And I think that to feel a sense of isolation, a feeling of aloneness, is a very horrible feeling for human beings to go through. And I think that marriage is one of those things that creates family and it creates community. And why would anyone not want that for somebody else? I can't imagine.
Well, in a way, we can imagine it. So here's my final question. Do you think this is all about fear and sex and the unconscious, and you're fighting in political terms what is really very frightening to people, which is there gayness in me? I'm picturing some people together in a way that offends me or scares me. Sometimes I think this is at least I feel sometimes we're fighting in a political arena something that really isn't political.
That's an interesting question, and maybe there's no exact answer to it. But I think it is very fear-based. I think it's emotional, it's personal, but they do say the personal is political. It's economic, it's institutional, it's a big deal. And so, again, I really applaud folks who stand up. And I'll have to tell you, every year I take part in the huge gay pride parade that happens here in New York City. And every year when I watch PFLAG, which is the parents and friends of lesbians and gays walk by, I get a tear in my eye because because it's very incredible. You know, it's very easy for me, as someone who identifies as gay, to get out and support gay rights. But another thing that I think that you're seeing generationally is that our straight allies are really showing up and saying, this is a civil rights issue, this is important to me. And that's a very powerful thing, to get outside of yourself and outside of your comfort level to really fight for something that works to empower others around you.
Good, and we'll see how many allies you have in Albany very soon.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you for your time.
It's Brian Lehrer Live. I'm Marty Goldenson sitting in. Here's something about another anniversary, a sad yet hopeful anniversary this month. 15 years since the Rwandan genocide, when 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. Not only have there been special trials aimed at reconciliation since then, but Rwandan leaders have done a remarkable job of creating a new, more prosperous country. And now, the UN's Millennium Project, the ambitious effort to eradicate extreme poverty, has reached Rwanda. We'll talk about that shortly. But let's begin with a look at how the Millennium Project itself has fared in the first village where it began, in Sauri, in Kenya.
In the ancient days, life in Sauri was not bad. The population of Sauri was very small, and therefore we had a vast land. And the land at that particular time was fertile. As the population increased, the land started becoming scarce. The tillage of land became continuous, until now the soil fertility went away. So that if you grow a crop, they will not grow well and you cannot get enough production.
They have been giving the villagers fertilizer, seeds. They have been teaching also the villagers the best ways of farming.
Through Millennium, we were taught on what is called diversification of agriculture. Long before, people only used to have one crop. In the introduction of this diversification of agriculture, they introduced more other crops apart from maize.
Most people used to get 1 to 2 sacks from 1 acre of land. But now you will find somebody getting 7 bags, 10 bags, or 12 bags. So you find throughout the year, each and every family has enough to eat and some surplus to sell, to cater for other needs.
That's Kenya. The UN's ambitious Millennium Project is now in Rwanda, too. 15 years after the genocide, Rwanda has recovered remarkably. How'd they do it? Mostly on their own, with a government plan called Vision 2020. Education and public health is a big part of it. With us to talk about Rwanda, Dr. Jacques Sibaso. Give me the right pronunciation so I get this right. Sebisaho. Forgive me, Sebisaho. He's provided health care on the ground in Rwanda and in the Congo, and I know it helps him because he knows 6 languages. And he is studying public health here in New York. And via Skype, development and public health expert Josh Ruxon, an assistant professor at Columbia who now lives in Rwanda. He founded the Access Project, which is working to install infrastructure. At the moment, he's in San Francisco. Josh, let me start with you in San Francisco. Boy, when I think of Rwanda, it brings up horror and pity, but not hope. But I've got it wrong, huh?
Yeah, I actually ended up moving with my family 4 years ago to Rwanda because it was the first country in Africa where I had worked, where I did not encounter corruption, and where I actually thought that people were ready to meet basic human needs and get the job done.
Wow. Jacques, how'd that happen?
As you know, you all know that in
1994, the genocide happened, but the government and the population, everybody decided to look beyond that and just to look for hope, not just focus on what happened, and everybody's focusing on building a new country, a capable state.
Yeah, we'll get to the rebuilding, but let's all talk about that process, because it was not what we saw in South Africa, you know, a truth and reconciliation. You know, the Tutsis won after being massacred and took over and said, let's have regular trials, right? Let's not have truth and reconciliation. That, as I understand, did not last.
Oh, I would say, like, you have heard of gacaca. It's like people's courts created to clear genocide.
Right. This was
yes.
It's pronounced
gacaca.
Gacaca, and those were the local courts that pre-existed
yes.
before the colonial period, right?
So these are built on the colonial model, like even not before the colonial model, during the king's time, during the kingdoms. So basically, people used to gather together and discuss a case, a problem in the society. If someone had done something wrong, we'll discuss in family or in the neighborhood.
Right.
You know, that's the reason. And so for us, the situation in Rwanda is really, really different from the South African situation. I would say that although this happened in 1994, but right. This has, you should look back even 100 years, even 200 years, like far beyond that.
Right.
So what Rwanda is doing now is just trying to heal this, like what happened 200 years ago. Even though this, as like our memory,
yes.
We only know that this, for the world, we know that this happened in 1994, but
right.
Rwanda...
You're healing an old memory.
Old, yes.
Yeah, I understand. Josh, this is how you understand it as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I think that the big challenge for Rwanda at this point isn't simply going through the healing process and the truth and reconciliation process that's been set up through Gacaca, but the challenge for the government of Rwanda is it recognizes to really heal these wounds comprehensively, it's going to take a new country. A country with its eyes on the future, a country where there's no poverty, a country where kids don't die from malaria and people don't die from AIDS, a country on the move. And that's really what Vision 2020 is about, and that's what government of Rwanda and the people of Rwanda have their sights on. A poor country, they believe, is not one where genocide would ever be possible again.
Interesting. Now, you've got this little landlocked country, which is, I think, what, the densest country in Africa, no? How in the world do you start?
Right, yeah.
Yes, we're in a little trouble with the line from San Francisco, but whoever is in contact can answer this. So what is the plan? What is the 2020 plan? To have a high-tech country?
Before responding to that question, Rwanda is 9 million people.
Right.
And 2/3 of the population is under 25 years old.
Really?
And you should also look at this, that almost half of the household are headed by women.
Yes.
So the government understood that. They understood that, and the widespread poverty that really threatened the food security and child mortality, maternal mortality. So the government understood that and want to move far beyond the genocide and this.
Right. So what are they doing to deal with the youthful population and the fact that there's so few fathers in the family?
And that's the reason why they've developed this Vision 2020.
Yes.
To reach the goal to reduce poverty by, let's say, half by 2020.
Is it about agriculture? Is it about wiring the place for the internet? What's it about?
It's about everything. It's about health, education. It's about agriculture. It's about infrastructure, as we are we are seeing it with the Millennium Village project, with Access project in Rwanda.
Yes. Let's go back for a minute to Josh. I'll ask him about what is Access doing? What's your project doing?
We're actually focused on building out the management systems within the public health system in Rwanda. A lot of people point to there being a lack of clinical personnel or a lack of drugs. And we've got a different diagnosis. We believe that the reason that health centers struggle is that they don't have good managers. And this is actually a problem across Rwandan life and across the private sector and public sector, that so many people were wiped out during the genocide. A new management class needs to be formed.
Should we take a second and listen to what Jeffrey Sachs had to say? It's just a very short video clip, but it pushes optimism and accountability. Is that?
Aid works
there it is.
When it's directed towards proven, measurable, monitorable, auditable technologies like immunizations, like bed nets, like medicines against malaria or river blindness, like soil nutrients and improved seeds to grow more food. If we did it, it would work, because when we do it once in a while, it really does work.
Of course, this seems to be more, Rwanda's sort of rebuilding itself is not really about aid, but it's really about Rwanda doing it. But Sachs raises an interesting question, which is, or an answer maybe, that they know what to do, we're just not doing it. What could Rwanda use more of from the outside world?
We need to support this Vision 2020, and even before going to Vision 2020, the Rwanda government adopted another strategy set up by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. This is called PRSP, Poverty Reduction Strategy Paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to be qualified as a highly indebted poor country, you have to adopt the strategy. So Rwanda has adopted it, but also, if I can use the word, like, try to inculturate that strategy into its own culture. So, and they've succeeded to do so. And so in 2000 they adopted it, but they found out that this was really, really ambitious to reduce poverty from 60% to less than 30%. That was ambitious. So the government would engaged again in a discussion and dialogue with various stakeholders, and they came up with another strategy, like a different one, a medium term, 5 years from in 2005.
Right, a meetable goal, so you won't feel like you've failed. Right, the possible. Let me jump to back to Josh for a second, so we can put some meat on this theory we just heard, which is meeting the World Bank conditions and all those things. Josh, tell us first, is there a hero behind this Vision 2020 thing? Is this top down? Is there a political figure whose vision this is?
Well, I think there's no doubt, really, that it's President Kagame who's behind Vision 2020. I mean, one of the key areas that Jacques didn't have a chance to mention about Vision 2020, or perhaps I missed it because of the bad Skype connection, is that the most ambitious part of that plan is to achieve per capita income of $1,000 by the year 2020. That's really the number one goal. That's something that the president talks about at every meeting that he has with his cabinet, and in interviews and all public information that's put out to the people of Rwanda. He wants to make sure that people get wealthy. And how's that going to happen? Well, there's really two bits to that. One is what Professor Sachs was just talking about, which we're doing through Millennium Villages Project and Vision 2020, which is trying to alleviate abject poverty. Kids shouldn't die from malaria. They shouldn't die from diarrhea. People should get good educations. They should have access to clean water. The basics should get done. There's no excuse for the basics not to get done. But that is not sufficient for achieving this key Vision 2020.
So what's the next step? You've got healthy people.
Per capita income.
You've got healthy people, right, let's say, and you're starting to have educated people. But what are the raw materials? What are the strengths of Rwanda, the land, the people? What direction does the president think it can go in? Josh first.
Well, this is something that really troubles the president and the government of Rwanda because of the density of the population, and because more than 85% of the population just farms the land and does basic subsistence level agriculture. there really are not a lot of assets. Now, some people might look at that and say, well, they're never going to make it. How can they possibly make it? But what they've discovered is by investing in knowledge, by investing in information communications technology and in tourism, they actually...
But you're going to finish that sentence for me.
Yes. Josh is totally...
plan is to...
Yes, you're intermittent for just a second. We didn't catch the end of that, but I think Josh is going to fill us in.
Yeah, Josh mentioned that investing in knowledge, like investing in technology, that will help Rwanda, because it's a really tiny, landlocked country.
Sure.
And that's one of the greatest solutions we have now, and I think it will succeed. I'm very optimistic about this. Yeah.
You're studying public health here in New York.
Actually, I'm studying public administration, focusing on health policy.
Health policy.
Yes.
What can you bring back to Rwanda? What expertise do you need? Why are you doing that?
I think knowing how to manage an organization, not only manage but also bring something new, some new fresh ideas. That's a key for development, and that's a key to lift out people from poverty. And I have a medical background, so I will have also to use that.
Sure.
So as Josh mentioned, there is no excuse whatsoever for a child to die from malaria. There is no excuse even for children to die even before reaching their 5th birthday. There's no excuse for that. Right. So we need knowledge and not only knowledge, but we also need the international understanding to help us
yes.
achieve this.
How, Josh, let me put this to you. You're still on the line, right?
Yes, I am.
How can a person watching this program help? I mean, apart from when in Washington or elsewhere they raise the idea of aid and why not opposing it, what can they do actively? What can a person watching this say, this is, how can I stop a kid from dying of malaria? How can I help the Rwandan government in this terrific 2020 plan?
So the good news is, when it comes to fighting abject poverty, there are a number of ways citizens can actually band together and help places like Rwanda. And to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria. And also go check out Millennium Promise, which is supporting the Millennium Villages Initiative in Rwanda. Those are two quick and easy ways. The Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria, and Millennium Promise.
I think we'll put those on our CUNY TV website so people can link to them. Also because it wasn't clear we got the correct URL there. And you wanted to add something about helping? What people might do?
Yeah, I think I've seen many projects working in Rwanda, but not because I work with the Millennium Villages, but this is one of the most holistic projects I've ever seen. Contains everything from health to education to infrastructure to agriculture. You have everything.
Very impressive.
And my own experience with what Millennium Villages has been accomplishing in Rwanda is that they are located in a small place, very poor place, where you really see a difference in really child and maternal mortality dropping down from 2005 to 2008. And not only that, but there is also something very, very important. Many people don't have access to health care because they cannot afford it. It's not very expensive compared to United American standard.
Forgive me for breaking in. We have just run out of time, and I need to move on to our next segment. But I think we get the gist of this, which is enormous leaps have happened. There already have happened in Rwanda, and it's possible to move on. It's a wonderful, optimistic story, and I'm surprised and happy to hear it. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
And you too, Josh. Thanks for coming on.
So much, Marty.
It's Brian Lehrer Live. Coming up, the law in the age of video, from Rodney King to the New School demonstrations. What you see is not what you get.
Hey, Sarah.
Oh my gosh, he's so cute. How do you know him?
Come on, Donovan, do it like I taught you. Love the new tattoo, Sarah. Let's go!
Dude, what? Dude, that's Sarah. The girl in the pink shirt, that's the girl I was telling you about.
Oh, that's Sarah?
Theater 2 on your left. Hey, Sarah. What color underwear today?
Hey, Sarah. So when are you going to post something new?
Anything you post online, anyone can see. Family, friends.
See you later, Sarah.
Even not so friendly people. Think before you post.
Ma, guess what? I went back to college. No, I didn't quit my job. I'm finishing my degree with a CUNY Online Bachelor's in Business. I interact online with real City University of New York faculty on a schedule that fits my busy life. Ma, you should look who's teaching at CUNY. And it all leads to a high-quality Bachelor of Science degree in business. I can attend class anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, even at your house Friday night for dinner.
The CUNY Online Baccalaureate. Get back to business.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. I'm Marty Goldenson sitting in. On Friday, 22 protesters were arrested at the New School. They had various demands, including a greater student voice in university affairs, demanding the resignation of their president, Bob Kerrey, and a board member they say is connected to a private security contractor working in Iraq. But we're going to focus on the arrests themselves. They've become controversial. Students say they were manhandled. The police say they were polite and professional. And they both have video to back up their stories. We'll look at these dueling YouTube videos with Donna Lieberman. She is the executive director of the New York Civil Liberties Union. And we can discuss how, even in the digital age, we are still struggling to discern the truth, even though we can hit rewind and see the truth again and again. This is not helpful in the legal profession, is it? You know, from Rodney King to now, seeing is not exactly believing. How come?
Well, you know, the video captures what the video captures, but it doesn't capture everything. It doesn't capture when the part that the lens isn't focused on, and it doesn't capture what happened before and what happened afterwards. But it does capture a lot. And even though we can have dueling videos, I think there are a number of examples in our very recent history, as you mentioned, Rodney King, where the video was worth a million words and really changed history.
Yes. Well, let's look at a couple of these dueling videos now, and I want to get your reaction, and the audience will have some thoughts too. Let's take a look at the view from behind the badge. The following video of Friday's arrest was released by the NYPD.
This being I don't know what that's all about.
So that's not a surprising video released by the police, right? They're just doing the right thing, right?
Absolutely. This is kind and gentle arrests.
Right, and that's what they should be doing. It's a narrow view, you're saying, and it's a moment in time. It's not the whole picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's typical of do the police now just do that? Do they? I mean, I was surprised when I initially saw that the police are releasing video. It's a war of videos.
Well, actually, you know, the police department uses videotaping a lot. During the Republican convention, you couldn't go to a demonstration of 3 people without there being at least 1, maybe 2 videographers with their terror jackets on.
Why were they doing it?
Well, that's a really good question. My view is that this was all about intimidating protesters who had every intention of protesting lawfully and peacefully, and they wanted to make a record. And the concern, of course, when that happens is that the police are going to be keeping a permanent file on
right, the fear of who was there.
Absolutely.
Of course, they would argue, I think, and we invited the police to come, and they said they couldn't make it, which well, there may be some conflicts. Not sure why, but in any case, you know, they would, I think, would argue that they are also protecting themselves. They have proof there that they said, "Please take off your backpacks," and they use the word "please." Right.
Well, I think that you know, having a video record is sometimes helpful, but not always.
The police have said two things. They say they often feel exonerated by the videos, and often are when they use those videos in the police cars, and they show that maybe they're exonerated. They didn't beat up somebody who claimed they did. But they've also said that they're scared to death of the videos, because if they briefly lose their temper or do something that was necessary, they say necessary force, it can look like too much. And
there are certain circumstances, I think, where videos are entirely appropriate and others where they're not. When you have a demonstration that's entirely peaceful and there's no hint of any illegal activity, you know, threatened, likely, or whatever, then why do it? You have to balance the intimidation factor. And when it comes to First Amendment rights, we really don't want to be a society that intimidates people from going on a demonstration for fear that they're going to go into the FBI files or the NYPD files.
So should there be rules? Should there be actual rules in the police department? You may not bring cameras and film something which is clearly going to be a peaceful demonstration, but you may bring cameras to this kind of thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the police department should not be routinely videotaping you know, lawful nonviolent protest activity. Absolutely. I think that when they have concerns about unlawful activity going on, that may be one of the tools that they use, but not as a general rule. We don't want to have a massive, you know, one police plaza file on some computer that's going to be searchable by face at some point, you know, of everybody who ever engaged in a piece of political protest.
No, that does not sound good. Let's look at the other side of this. Here's a video shot by freelance journalist Brandon Jordan of what was going on outside. We saw the inside police shooting, where police don't come off quite so benignly. Now, it turns out that video is a fine example of the limits of video, that you see what you see at a moment in time, because before you make up your mind, let's get one more perspective. This grainy video we're about to see was shot by a Brooklyn College sophomore, Chris McCallion. It challenges the video you just saw. Protesters can be seen, I think I'm seeing this right, hurling a barricade towards the police and then running off. If I knew what camera 4 was. Yeah. So what do you make of this?
Well, I think, you know, it shows more of what was going on around the same time. Two things. First of all, the first and second videos that we saw are not dueling videos. Those were different videos.
Right.
But even if some protesters, as was depicted here, and I have to look at these things several times over before I can really, you know, get the picture fixed in my mind. But even if there was a barricade thrown, I'm not sure whether it was thrown at police or not, we see, independent of that, somebody yelling, in the second video, somebody standing there yelling, shame on you at the police, and then getting assaulted by the police officer, you know, whacked in the face, thrown down, and handcuffed. So there's nothing in the hurling the barricades video that justifies a police officer going at somebody who seems to be standing there shouting, shame on you. So I'm not sure that...
It sounds like video is pretty much useless. It's like a bad instant replay on a football game.
Well, it's a limited instant replay,
right.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure that the video, you know, when you take the time to look at all this, that it's equivocal in terms of, you know, the appropriateness of the force used agaed that in that last
from what
instance.
happened or didn't happen at the new school, nationally, what's the picture? Is video, which is everywhere between surveillance and cell phones. It's just everywhere.
Right.
Does it influence judges and juries? Is it changing things?
Oh, it is definitely changing things.
In what way? Tell me about it.
Well, I think that video, as equivocal as it is often, or maybe at least sometimes, also gives us a picture, and no amount of words can be that picture. As I said before, Rodney King. No way would his story have been believed without the video. You know, the New York Civil Liberties Union had an experience. We released the video last spring of a woman falling onto the floor and dying, laying there dying on the floor of the Kings County Hospital Center psychiatric emergency room.
I remember it.
And there's no way that story would have come to light and gotten the attention and the resultant reforms happening, but for the video. So,
as usual, it's a tool.
It's a
tool for good or evil. So in some, watch out that it's not used to repress civil rights and freedom, right? Use it for proof, you know, on both sides. Don't believe in it alone. That summarize it?
And yes, it does. I mean, during the Republican convention, you know, 267 people were arrested on Fulton Street. When the NYCLU got a video from an HBO filmmaker, we succeeded in getting all 267 of those arrests dismissed.
I've got to cut in now because we run out of time.
Gotta go.
Donna, I'm sorry we don't have more time. Come back.
I will. Happy to.
Good, good. And that's it for tonight. Brian Lehrer will be back next week, but meanwhile, tune into his radio program on WNYC. It's on from 10 a.m. to noon weekdays. It is full of dialogue and not diatribe, which is why we like him. We're here live at 7:30 each Wednesday evening. Thanks for watching, and good night.